Chapter 1 Pawn Endgames. Pawn endgames are very concrete. Even the tiniest change in the position generally alters the shape and outcome of the struggle. Here, you can rarely get along on general principles. You must know how to calculate accurately. The study of pawn endings chiefly boils down not to the memorization of exact positions, but to the assimilation of standard techniques, which considerably eases our search for a solution and the calculation of variations. Many pawn endings are clearly defined tempo battles. Let's see. The study of pawn endings chiefly boils down not to the memorization of exact positions, that's good, but to the assimilation of standard techniques, alright, which considerably eases our search for a solution and the calculation of variations. So we won't be off miscalculating or calculating the wrong variations all the time. Okay. Many pawn endings are clearly defined tempo battles. In these end games, speed is everything. Which pawn will queen first? Will the king come in time to stop the passed pawn or get to the other side of the board in time? In these end games, speed is everything. These tempo battles, clearly defined tempo battles. Which pawn will queen first? Will the king come in time to stop the passed pawn or get to the other side of the board in time? And there are other pawn endings in which a maneuvering war predominates and in which zugzwang assumes paramount importance. Maneuvering endgames are generally more complex than rapid ones. But we shall begin with them anyway, in order to acquire the vital concept of corresponding squares. Then we shall switch to studying the ideas involved in rapid endgames before returning once again to the maneuvering. Okay, key squares. Key squares are what we call those squares whose occupation by the king assures victory, regardless of whose turn it is to move. In other types of endgames, we may also speak of key squares for other pieces besides the king. Okay. The d5 square on which the king now stands is not a key square. White to move does not win. The key squares are c6, d6, and e6. Black to move must retreat the king, allowing the enemy king onto one of the key squares. With white to move, the position is drawn since he cannot move to any key square. Okay. Draw. Stalemate. Okay. Black to move must retreat the king. So actually we should have just kept the pieces. Yeah, that complicates matters a little bit. Let's see. Alright. Black to move must retreat the king. Black to move must retreat the king, allowing the enemy king onto one of the key squares. With white to move, the position is drawn since he cannot move to any key square. With a pawn on the 5th rank, see the next diagram, the key squares are not only a7, b7, and c7, but also the similar 6th rank squares a6, b6, and c6. White wins even if he is on move. Alright, so in this diagram, critical squares. Mm-hmm. Oops. Alright. Now, king a6, exclam. King a8, b6. King b8, b7. Note that king c6, b7 winning. Note that c6 is inaccurate in view of king a7. When white has to return to the starting position with king c7. Wait, no, I made a mistake. I guess king c6 would be a mistake. And yet that was marked as one of the critical squares. Well, it's still winning. Yeah. Okay, because you could go back. Whatever black does here. Well, if black steps off to the side, you're still winning. But if black plays instead... king a7, then b6, king a8. And now I can't step forward because of stalemate. And then I have to step back instead. Or if I step away, black picks up the pawns, so here and then here. Or alternatively, if I play back here, repeats. And then if I advance here, 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 or step away and caps the pawn. Okay. So, king c6, king a8, rather king a7. Because, so king c6, king a7, king c7, king a8, b6, stalemate. Okay. Let's see, we have a symbol here. Circle with a dot inside of it is a symbol. What does it mean? Sugswung, I see. Very well. Alright. The key squares are a6, b6, and c6. The sensible thing here is to head for the square farthest from the enemy king, so that will be the one that is hardest to defend. What? I skipped. Whoops. We have a new diagram. Alright, we're gonna have here, here, and here. Okay, the key squares are a6, b6, and c6. The sensible thing here is to head for the square farthest from the enemy king, since that will be the one that is hardest to defend. Alright, so king c2, exclam. King e7. Bang, I think is the correct word for the exclam. Alright, let's see. So king b3, king d6. Alright, king b3. I messed up, hold on. King is here. Incorrect. Yes, okay. King is here. Alright, so now we have king c2, king e7, king b3, king d6, king a4. If you play king c4, actually, so here we should set up the position, right? So the problem is that if the author is going to talk about different moves, or is going to look at which side plays first, then we can't set up the board, but here we need to. Alright, so we have king c2, king e7, king b3, king d6, king a4. If you play king c4 instead, king c6 is a draw. Not like that, though. Ah, indeed. Alright. King a4 it is. Okay, so now king c6, king a5. We have another symbol, it's a triangle. Triangle, king a6. With a threat or idea of king a6. King a5 with the threat of king a6. Okay. King b7. Denying king a6. Well, because if you allow king a6, then the kings are side by side. You can't step here, you'd have to step here, king follows. Not clear what black would have to do. Yeah, it's kind of strange to say that this is the idea of king a6. Well, I mean, the alternative of b5 is not the idea. Where the king steps back to b7 and denies access to a6 and b6. Anyway, so king b7, king b5, as opposed to advance, and then here, leverage check here, here. Let me see. Can't advance the pawn because I take it. Step over here, but then here, but then it repeats. Still can't advance, can't step. No, you can step forward. It's actually bringing us to an interesting point. Does this turn into the same case we considered earlier? Interesting. King is behind the pawn. Yes. King b5. Hmm. Okay. I think 1-4, no 1-3. All right. Let's see. Add to game collection. Create new collection. Collection name. Dvoretsky. Alright. We can't give it a name though. We'd have to save details. Yeah, that's not what I was looking for actually. Hold on. Where did my buttons go? Give me back my buttons. Oh no, horrible. Oh no, why is there a voice line? Oh no, what? It broke my. Okay, well, I guess we shouldn't have clicked on that button. Alright. Okay. Alright, now we have a real life game. Okay. King F2. Alright. On King G1 question mark. Oh, hold on. Loaded. Alright. On King. So we have King F2 as main line on King G1 question mark. King D7. Black's king successfully defends the pawn. Okay. But now it is too late. And this was deserving of an X-Clan, yeah. Now, but H4 instead. Exclam. The natural king f3 is refuted by h3 exclamation mark. If the pawn is taken, black's king heads for h8. And if 3g4, white cannot gain control of the key squares on the 6th rank. Okay. White cannot gain control of the key squares in the 6th rank. King d7. Well, I mean... Yes, but you don't have to do that. Yeah, indeed. Okay, so... White cannot gain control of key squares in the 6th rank, so king d7. Let's see. King g3. Wait, what? Oh, it wasn't king, it was this. Okay, king g3. Yeah, we have to get used to, get used to a phrase which means something rather like readiness to hand, or presence at hand. I think readiness. Let's see. So king g3. Hold on, this is still wrong. Let me go back. So h4. I'm not understanding what this is telling me. Let's go back. So king f2 on king g1 instead, but we already looked at that. This happens. Okay. And now king f2, h4. King g1 is main line. So actually, this is main line as well. And then king back to g1 is main line. So now h4, king g1, the natural king f3 is defeated by h3. G takes, king d8, as this line indicates. Okay, so instead... f3, and instead... Oh, here we go, okay. So h3, which would have been taken, and then the king... Well, if white had taken on h3, then the king moves to h8. Okay. If g4, white cannot gain control of the key squares in the 6th rank. So king d7 now, king g3, king e6, king takes h3, you can't leave it alone. But now there's no, you can't go to the corner. Usefully anyway. Though there'd be a point, I assume, that you could stay at long range on the. You don't have to go up and meet the pawn, though. That's the. You get a convenient mnemonic device, as it were. Well, no, actually, that's wrong because there's such a thing as the key square. Well, in this theory, we have the key squares. If white's king, like if you try to go to the corner, well, you'd have to meet the king at the key squares then. So you'd have to be on the 7th rank, preventing white's king from getting to the 6th rank. But you could then go here. Okay, you advance the king, I play over. You advance the king, I play over. No, wait, I go in the other direction. Okay. Isn't that wrong? Hold on. Yeah, though the idea again is we're solely trying to prevent. So what is this pattern? Let's see. Well, but black doesn't have any alternatives at this point. You'd have to have made a different decision earlier. Already too late. Okay, so maybe you do have to stop. Okay, let's do it. Uh-oh. Hmm. What time is it? I have no conception of how much time this is taking. Hmm. Yeah, well, this needs to have, there needs to be a kind of feeling behind this. What do I mean? It's just a pinch in the chest. You would need to go here to obtain opposition. So it looks like the critical idea is we need to maintain the ability to step into opposition, which we're going to learn about in the next section. Then that wouldn't be correct. No, here and then here. That wouldn't be correct either. No, it would be here. Because if you advance the king, then we go here. Okay. So we need to be able to step into opposition. I guess part of the point here is that white can't keep claiming opposition because of the pawn. If the king was in front of the pawn, white could claim opposition. But the pawn is preventing the king from occupying this position. Interesting. Alright, so now let's go back here. H4, King G1 double exclam. Yeah, I'd at least give that an exclam. Let's see here. Alright, so actually the author gives the line here, which is that King of 2, H4, and then no, rather King of 3, advance. Let's see. King D7, King G3, King E6, King takes H3, King F6, King H4, King G6. So it's assumed by now that we could carry this through to a draw. Okay. Now, but if we go back to G1, okay, now H3, G3. The key squares for a pawn on the G. The key squares for a pawn on G3 are on the 5th rank, closer to white's king. Is there like a table? Do we have a table of values for the critical squares for the pawns? Well, not there. Right, King E6, King takes H3. I assume King E5, rather F5. King H4, King G6, opposition. And if you try to claim this instead, yeah, then we could just keep advancing. Except here, so instead we have to stop at some point, or what happens here? Well, we're already on the 6th rank, so we have assured victory. We just had to find it. Uh-oh. Alright. Very well. But so the critical point here is that, well, I mean, the author wants to describe this as key squares, which is a convenient way of remembering the point of these squares, which is that getting to them assures that you win. But on the other hand, the critical description of these squares seems more to be that you need to be in front of the pawn. Well, here the author says that the key squares are on the 5th rank. Okay, whereas a pawn on the 5th rank has key squares on the 6th rank. So it's not that the only, it's not the case that the only descriptor is being in front of the pawn. Apparently you need to be 2 in front of the pawn if the pawn's on g3, and you need to be 1 in front of the pawn if the pawn is on the 5th rank. Okay. Interesting. Corresponding squares. Corresponding squares are squares of reciprocal zugzwang. We may speak of corresponding squares for kings with pawns and with other material. We may speak of correspondence between any pairs of pieces. Corresponding squares are squares of reciprocal zugzwang. Yeah, I mean, that makes... I don't know if reciprocal zugzwang is the right description, but it reminds me of the knights in the last championship game that we watched. The knights were in opposition to each other. Yes, well, consistently in favor of I don't remember what colors. Ju and June's knight. Well, and so it says that we can have corresponding squares, which are squares of reciprocal zugzwang. What does that mean? Reciprocal zugzwang is about... Well, zugzwang is about not having an option for where to move. Reciprocal zugzwang is about forcing that state of affairs onto the opponent, and then the opponent being able to force it back onto you. Reciprocal zugzwang, I assume. We may speak of corresponding squares for kings with pawns and with other material. We may speak of correspondence between any pairs of pieces. Alright. The most commonly seen cases of corresponding squares are the opposition mined squares, oh no, and triangulation. Alright. Tragicomedies is this name of this game that we're about to look at. Okay, so how do we... Nope, that wasn't it. Did we lose it? No. How do we... save... Yes, though... Yeah, no, table weight... No, that wasn't it. Let me see here. Can we not name the... Well, don't click on review. I can't name it. Why not? Oh, there we go. Alright, so this is 1-4. We'll just... We can do 1-4. Okay, sure. Not allowed to perform analysis. I'm not allowed to perform analysis. What? Let's see. So now we go back to. I got about 15 minutes. We can do another one. Alright, set up position. Alright, so this doesn't say white to move. We are perhaps supposed to assume white to move unless otherwise specified. I'm not sure. Alright, white must lose the pawn. Why must... Oh no. Black's a king up. No. Let me see. Alright, let's see. Load. Alright, the lady playing white, Scotland's board 1, saw that she must lose the d5 pawn and therefore resign. What can I say except no comment needed? Covered that. Well, I would be here and here. Okay. And then obviously you have to. So I mean, yeah, you only have these two squares as options because you have to obtain contact with the pawn. Though then you'd have to know that this was a loss. Yeah, there's kind of an annoyance here with how kind of an annoyance. There's an issue here with how arrows work. So you can preserve arrows, which is good for commentary. However, you have to do arrows as the last thing that you do, because if you click to move a piece, you delete all of the arrows. And what does that tell me? Tells me that we have to start at the end of a line and do analysis backwards. I'll draw arrows backwards. So I can only draw arrows when I'm at the end of a line, because if I have to carry it forward, we'll be deleting the arrows. Okay. Math. Yeah. Let's see. So that's 1-5. All right. We might end up doing this with software instead of doing this with this website. Unclear as of yet. I mean, we might not end up doing this at all. Could be I change my mind. Could be. Let's see. We have Rook, King. Okay. Rook F4, King G5. Exclam. Rook F4 double question mark. You invite the king into the critical square. Though I don't have like a table of critical squares to draw from, so how am I supposed to know that this is one of the critical squares? Well, I guess you're supposed to do your homework and figure out. No, I'll take a table, thank you. Let's see. Did white have an alternative? You have to get out from in front of the pawn here. Here, force the king away. And now you can shuffle the rook, because if rook check, you take the pawn. Preferred. Question mark on rook c6. Why get closer to the king than you have to? If you deliver check instead, it's repetition. Actually, this wouldn't be a repetition because king started on f3, but... Well, I mean, we already know that this works, so just do that. Step over here instead. No pawn advance. If you step the king back to allow the pawn advance, I deliver check to force the king away. However, in the main line, after king g5, white resigned. Okay, that was 1-6. Okay, I thought I typed in 1 there, but apparently not. Alright. Please enter 3 more characters. No. That is apparently optional. Yeah, Opposition. Opposition is the state of 2 kings standing on the same file with 1 square separating them, which is close opposition. With 3 or 5 squares between them is called distant opposition. The opposition may be vertical, horizontal, or diagonal. Okay. To get the opposition means to achieve this standing of the kings. Alright, let's get analysis board. What is the first position we have to represent? Alright, set up position here. Now we got this. Okay. Now the kings are 1 away. Opposition. However, we could also have, let's be generous with our king allocation. Alright, and then we're going to have I don't know, I think white has the advantage. Oh, white also has the move. Kind of meaningless symmetry here. Not symmetry, but whatever. Okay. To get the opposition means to achieve this standing of kings 1 square apart with the opponent to move, that is, to put him into zugzwang. To fall into opposition means, conversely, to fall into zugzwang oneself. Alright, so if it's white to move, white has obtained a total victory over black because we have opposition on all fronts. Look at this. There's nothing black can do. Except give up ground. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. White has fallen into opposition with this king. Let's see. Return to diagram 1, where we see the simplest case of opposition, close and vertical. Okay, diagram 1. Alright, the simplest case of the opposition, close and vertical. With white to move, there is no win. King c5. Let's see. King c7. Or king e5, king e7. Alright. Black to move loses because he must allow the enemy king onto one of the key squares. E.g. king c7, and then king e6. Or if king e7, then king c6. Okay. Opposition is the main weapon in the fight for 3 connected key squares. In diagram 1-1, they are c6, d6, and e6. Okay. When we are speaking of the opposition, it is usually not just one pair of squares, but several, which are under consideration. c5, c7, d5, d7, and e5, e7. The stronger side gets the opposition in order to execute an outflanking, where the enemy king retreats to one side and our king then attacks the other way. The weaker side gets the opposition in order to prevent this outflanking. The stronger side gets the opposition in order to execute an outflanking. It's interesting here from a meta-mathematical standpoint. We're calling this an outflanking. There's a lot of defining terms going on, okay, where none of these definitions are required of us. Yeah, well, that would generally be the case. Yeah. All right. Okay, we can call that. All right, that's all the Dvoretsky we get for today. We can streamline this a little bit. Probably not going to be every day, but maybe, I don't know. Whenever it strikes me. Probably we're not going to be doing this during this segment, because I already don't have enough time on my actual studies. But we might give over some of the exercise and thinking out loud segment to Dvoretsky. Okay, now what? Well, now it's either 2 hours of calculus, or we do a little bit of box filling, a little bit of axiomatic set theory. I think we will do that. Okay. First, however, I will take a break. Okay. All right, I'll be right back. Okay. Mm, yeah, I mean, this phrase needs some consideration. What do I mean? So if we go back to the original expression, there exists an X such that C is equal to the set containing its elements X for and X is an element of A. Then S is an element of C. If and only if we will recall S is an element of the big intersection of the set containing its elements Y such that tau of X and X is an element of A. Well, rather, the point would be if and only if S is an element intersection such that x is an element of A of tau of x. Okay. Now what is the question here? C equals the set containing its elements x4 and x is an element of A, then S is an element of C. Okay. Right, there exists an x. So I remain at a loss of what to do with these quantifiers. Well, suppose, suppose we had C0 is equal to the set containing as elements 0, 4. Okay, and C1 is equal to the set containing as elements 1, 4. Well, no, actually, we do want those written out so that I can make it a color point. Okay, we'll have C2 is equal to the set containing elements 2, 4. C3 is equal to the set containing elements 3, 4. Okay, C4 is equal to the set containing elements 4, 4. And then we can do dot, dot, dot. Oh, speaking of which, right, we have to complete that LeetCode problem, or I have a preference to do that. Well, then we shouldn't have wasted our time in chess. Unbelievable, we still had a job to do. Well, I'm not sure when we'll do that. Certainly I will be finishing this example, this observation, before we make any switch. Oh, and I need to change the string title, speaking of which. This is not chess brat, yeah. Let's see. You're right, you are correct. Hold on. I'm thinking this is probably a scammer. Hold on, what is this person's name? Oh. Well, whatever. Let's see. Okay, sure. But I have a follow. I don't know. No, I'm definitely not gonna add that person on Discord, I have to say. Let's see. Now, what do I want to say? So, there exists an x such that x is an element of 4. What? Rather, there exists an x such that x is an element of... No, such that c is equal to... the set containing its elements x4. Okay, so that description obtains of all of these. Let's see, I'll do this with orange, suggestively, because we have poppy red for tau. Alright, well, this entire expression is tail, and then we can do. Alright, and x is an element of a. Alright, so now what point do I want to make? All of these are orange. Okay. And then Spanish orange is here. Oh, well, that assumes we know that A is equal to the second containing its elements 1, 2, 3. Okay. An alternative point here is that if I had the set containing C negative 1, C sub 0, C sub 1, dot dot dot, and yeah, we'll do C sub 2, C sub 3, C sub 4, dot dot dot, then these would be accounted for by Spanish orange. X is an element of A. Alright, and then otherwise we would have the last case here, which is that. So this is once again treating these descriptions as explanations for why we choose the coloring we choose. Or how do you fill in the coloring? So we could do, let's see, right, so we committed this because it's kind of short and we're going to run out of it. We committed this to the rare cause of explaining why we have a coloring that we have. Okay, how do I want to use this color to indicate that? I guess I'll just do this. Okay, sure. Now, what is the idea? Then S is an element of C. So we have another quantifier that we don't have for all C. For all C, if there exists an X. Ah, right, so this, as we adjudged, is not correct. So here we observe that we prefer to have the quantifier well, so we want this to say if there exists an X such that. As opposed to there exists an X such that right, with different implications for what these expressions are. Well, for different implications for how we want these expressions to behave. If there exists an X such that C equals tau of X and X is an element of A, then S is an element of C. Now, but I still can't make any sense of this. Like, what do you mean? Well, what is the S is an element of C? How do we continue this expression or this? Let's see here. So what is the S that is an element of C? And well, so we specifically avoided, like we could have said, for all X, X is an element of the big intersection of X is an element of A of tau of X, which would have been confusing to be sure. If and only if for all X, X is an element of, instead of S, is an element of the big intersection of the set containing as elements Y such that Y is equal to tau of X and X is an element of A. Okay. And now the point here is that we would say if and only if, let's see, X is an element of, there exists a C such that C is equal to the tau of X and X is an element of A, then, no, there exists a C. Actually, this is a similar question. I don't know, where does the there exists an X statement come in? Alright. Not quite here. Pink there. Is that part of the y equals part of the original definition? Yes. There exists an X such that y equals tau of X. There exists an X such that C equals tau of X and X is an element of A. Then X is an element of C. Okay, and now by this point, well, and it's actually about to get even worse because we're about to say if and only if there exists a C such that there exists an X such that C is equal to the set containing as elements X4 and X is an element of A, then X is an element of C. Alright, and now the trick here, the problem here, is that we're on the verge of tricking ourselves. What do I mean? this x is it the same as this x, and is that x the same as this x, and is that x the same as this x? And how would I determine that? Now, ideally, it would be a typographical rule, and I would just ask about scope. But I don't think it is just a typographical rule. I mean, it could be that tau of x implies that x is an element of C to begin with. And what significance would that have? So we could say that this is equal, for instance, to C sub tau if we wanted to. And what we would gain from this, or what this would be telling us, is that let me think here. Well, so we could have had, yeah, we could indicate that. So if we have A is equal to the set containing these elements 1, 2, 3, but then if we had instead said B is equal to the set containing these elements negative 1, 0, 4. So we could do negative 1, do 1 and 4. Then what? Okay, now, so when I say there exists a C, it should actually be for all C, not there exists. Yes, well, so this is why I didn't choose X. This is why I chose S. Because it's too easy to say. Well, I mean, for one thing, we can twist this statement into saying X is an element of C and 4 is an element of C. And then the extension of saying, and there's some Y that is an element of C such that Y is not equal to X and Y is not equal to 4. Okay. Then what? Well, so then we would have X is an element of C, then X is an element of C. This would be trivial, but it's not. That's a typographical coincidence. Hence why we're saying S instead. Okay. Yes, well, it remains a question. For all C, if there exists an x such that C is equal to the set containing its elements x4 and x is an element of A, then x is an element of S is an element of C. What does that mean? Hmm. Unclear. Well, I mean, in practice, because recall what's on the other side of this. What's on the other side of this is saying S is an element of the big intersection of tau of x, where x is an element of A. And then notably, if and only if S is an element of the big intersection of tau of x, which is where x is an element of A, of the set containing its elements x, 4. I mean, so in this context, well, okay. So one point that struck me earlier that I want to think about here is this how much point again that saying that ordered pairs are sets, identifying ordered pairs. So there's a motivation for identifying an ordered pair with a set containing two sets. It's because there is a mechanical process that we can apply to a set containing two sets that tells us the ordering. Where we can take the ordering away from how the process behaves. So I could say, I am taking the union of the two sets that are elements of the ordered pair, okay? And I get one element out because you can't have duplicates. Not the union, rather the intersection. I take the intersection of the two sets and I get the x coordinate. And then I say, whichever one of these coordinates is not the x coordinate, that's the y coordinate. Okay. And now I say, this is my identification of x and y, which all that I need out of an ordered pair is the ability to identify x and y. So this set containing two sets is as good of a representation of an ordered pair as I need. Okay, but how much observes? But this makes it the case that if you say this is an ordered pair, then you're also saying that the set containing as elements x is an element of the ordered pair xy, which is not a property that you needed of ordered pairs. It's like this incidental property that your ordered pair has in consequence of being represented in set notation. Alright, so now we're making the same observation again, but how are we doing that? Let me think here. Right, so something this sets up for us is that there doesn't have to be a sort of pristine correspondence between syntax and semantics. Rather, whenever we feel motivated to say something in our semantics, there has to be some corresponding syntax. If there happens to be extra syntax lying around, that's none of our concern, as it were. With this, yes, well, again, it doesn't make like there's this extra syntax lying around for saying that the set containing x is an element of the ordered pair xy. We don't need that syntax for anything because we never. No, actually, I mean, sort of presciently, you would need that. Well, it wouldn't be prescient because Newman was involved in the early computers, but well, okay, maybe a little bit prescient. I don't know. Sort of prescient because thinking about the mechanical process that allows you to extract x, the set contain. Well, yeah, the that allows you to determine which of the two is the x coordinate. Hold on, maybe I'll put let's see, quotation marks. Well, no, I'll do that with the Q1. So this will be red. All right, and now I say. The set containing as elements x is an element of the ordered pair x, y. Okay. Now what is the idea? So again, we have this fact about ordered pairs that serves no one, serves no purpose, except if you were representing ordered pairs in a computer. If I had to represent ordered pairs with lists, for instance, this kind of observation would be meaningful and relevant. Anyway, but we're taking this observation sort of in reverse here. What do I mean? So taking this observation in reverse, we're saying that right. Well, does this have to be? Are we expecting this to be a perfect match? And what would that even mean? How would this end up being a perfect match? What do I mean? So we're saying for all C, if there exists an X such that C equals the set containing as elements X4, and X is an element of A, then X is an element of C. Okay. What does that even mean? I don't know. Rather, S is an element of C, not X. Now, if we let this be X, it makes more typographical sense. We're saying X is an element of this set. Which is meaningful. But then, okay, hold on, what point am I making? I'm trying to make the point that let's see, S is an element of C. Well, so I think what we're supposed to interpret this as. Well, okay, so let's see. I mean, how we end up having to interpret this is that X is S. S is X, sure. Why? Because. Well, no, it would be S is 4 or S is X. Yes, well, conveniently C is equal to the set containing as elements X4, so it shouldn't surprise us that S being an element of C. So actually, yeah, I mean, we could form a replacement, and maybe we should make that note where we say for all C, dot, then S, it looks too much like a 5, yeah, S equals X, or S equals 4. And we don't need any further qualification, notably. What do I mean? Well, when we say S is an element of C, we don't need some kind of negative statement of saying S is equal to X or S is equal to 4 and not there exists another element that is an element of C. What is my point with this observation? So S equals X or S equals 4. So this orange comment is that we need something in the syntax that we agree to call the correlate to our semantics. That sounds like the start of an argument that if it turns out there are zany, unintended syntactical effects, we should just overlook them and say we just need there to be some stable state of our set machine, as it were. What do I mean by that? Some stable state of our set machine. One moment. We need there to be some end state of the set machine that we're willing to call the correlate of our semantics. Though also we need every end state of our set machine to have some correlate in our semantics. Or at least it can't constitute a contradiction. I'm not sure I'm really tying in this observation. Yeah, this observation might not really be here. I'm still trying to make sense out of this phrase, for all C, if there exists an X such that C equals the set containing these elements X4 and X is an element. So actually, I think the way of tying in this orange observation about ordered pairs is saying that any tau expression is going to give us something to do like this. Interesting. So the idea is that tau of X is always going to produce some set that contains X. Well, I don't know. It's going to produce some set that is designated in terms of X. I mean, it could be that a tau operator involves subtraction. Like we're subtracting elements of A from something. Okay, and then the idea would be that well, we would still need to specify X. We'd still need to reference X in order to reference what set we're ending up with. Okay. Now, the point would be, there's always going to be some reference to X in this tau expression that allows us to choose the consequent, to target the consequent. So in this case, it's S is an element of C into I'm not sure about that quantification. I also don't know how to investigate the question. S is an element of C if and only if S equals X or S equals 4. Alright, so again the idea is that, well, let's suppose I do, let's suppose we say for all X, X is an element of tau of X if and only if, okay, for all X, X is an element of the big intersection of the set containing as elements Y such that there exists an X such that, it shouldn't be X, this should be S. There exists an X such that Y is equal to the set containing these elements X4 and X is an element, rather, yeah, X is an element of A. Okay. Rather, the big intersection of the tau of X where X is an element of A. Alright, so this is our familiar tau expression, except now we're going to mix it up and we're going to say, oh, right, that's wrong. Over here, we're going to mix it up. We're going to say Y is equal to tau of X. And tau of X is equal to, let's see. The set containing as elements 1, 2, 3, minus X. Actually, yeah, we don't have space, so let's just write in tau of X and then write tau of X equals. Alright. Is equal to the tau of X. Okay, and now I say tau of X is equal to the set containing as elements 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 minus X. Okay. And so now this would turn into saying S is an element, well, yeah, okay, we'll just say if and only if for all C there exists an X such that C is equal to the set containing as elements 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 minus X. And X is an element of A, then S is an element of C. Okay, how does that end up working out, if at all? We can do blue here. Alright, and so now the point is to say that S is an element of C if and only if S is equal to 0 or S is equal to 1. That might be a little bit confusing. S is equal to 1 or S is equal to 2. Yeah, whatever. S is equal to 3 or S is equal to 4 and not S is equal to 1, 2, 3. Okay. That's a little bit off key, but whatever. Alright, so what point is this making? So we can still follow through on the syntax here. Okay. So for all C, if there exists an X such that C is equal to the set containing its elements 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and X is an element of A, then well, actually, we could do S is an element of the set containing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and not S is an element of the set containing its elements 1, 2, 3, where A is equal to the set containing its elements 1, 2, and 3. Alright. Which we will say is proven, probably. We've already proven this. If and only if. Actually, yeah, we'll do that one separate because we need to close these brackets. This bracket. Alright. S is an element of the set containing elements 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And not S is an element of the set containing elements 1, 2, 3. If and only if S is an element of the set containing its elements 0, 4. For granted now. So, but the real point here is that for all C, there exists an X such that C is equal to the set containing ... and X is an element of A, then S equals 0 or S equals 4. Alright, and this is even though tau of X equals yeah, even though we've adjusted the tau definition, we still have a way of producing this expression. We still have a way of getting what we need out of this syntax. Okay. Hmm. But what do we do with this? Interesting, because if we say this is phi, recall that the expression we're working with says that for all S is an element of the big intersection of tau of x, where x is an element of A, if and only if phi, and that might be a double. And no, that's not by definition. No, well, it literally is by. No, this is a particular case. Yeah, that would not be by definition. There is a definition that's relevant here. For all S is an element of the big intersection of tau of x, where x is an element of A if and only if phi. Where this entire expression is what we're taking to be phi. Now the question is, again, what do we get out of this? What do I mean? What do we get out of this? Well, I mean, we could take this entire expression, we could say, so we have A in this case. If I want to treat this as a template, sure. Alright, so we say, do like this over here, which is what struck me. So we're going to say, for all C, if there exists an X such that C is equal to the set containing its elements 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and X is equal to, well, X is an element, yeah, okay, but X is equal to 1, or X is equal to 2, or X is equal to 3. Okay, then S equals 0, or S equals 4. Okay. But again, what do we get out of this? Minus. Okay, if and only if. Well, now we can get rid of the x's. This would turn into saying C is equal to this set minus X and X equals 1. Actually, maybe we do need to think about that syntax. Because what I'm wanting to do here is subtract all of these x values, but I'm not sure what the syntactical justification for that is. Let's get this. Let's just save these quantifiers so I don't have to keep writing them. Though, that's how you forget that you have quantifiers. C is equal to the set containing its elements 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and x equals 1. I don't need those brackets, yeah. Or C equals the set containing its elements 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and x equals 2 minus x, yeah, and let's actually just erase that. Where minus x is saying and not x is an element. Okay, so minus x and x equals 2. Okay, and this would be or. Yeah, or, and then C is equal to the set containing its elements 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, minus x, and x equals 3. Alright. Then, yes, well, we're trusting that this works. S is an element of this set and not so S is equal to 0 or 1 or 2 or 3, and not S is equal to 1, and not S is equal to 2, and not S is equal to 3. Okay. If and only if. Now, what is the justification for saying? Well, no, but that's not quite the question. The question here, I think, is. So we say C is equal to the set containing as elements 0, 2, 3, 4. Okay, or C is equal to the set containing these elements 0, 1, 3, 4. Or C is equal to the set containing these elements 0, 1, 2, 4. Then S is equal to 0 or S is equal to 4. Yeah, I mean, so part of the problem here with set theory, in my estimation, whatever this is worth, part of the problem with set theory is that all of this statement is in the context of saying that S is an element of the big intersection of tau of X, where X is an element of A. Alright? It's like I'm setting up this sentence and I'm expecting to have the ability to comprehend it all at once, which I can't do. So I have a sentence, maybe with enough practice and with enough intent to focus. I'm not even really trying to understand what these sentences are saying much of the time. Much of the time I am not trying to understand what these sentences are saying, though I hope some of the practice is rubbing off. Well, what is my point here? It's like I'm expecting the same kind of semantic satisfaction that you get from understanding a sentence, but that's not going to happen because we can't hold this entire sentence in the head to understand it all at once. Like, why can't I phrase this in such a way that I understand it? Is it because it's incomprehensible? Yes, but it's not incomprehensible because of the content. It's incomprehensible because of the length. So I am thinking. Now, though, with that having been said, I think this has a sufficiently intuitive reading. What do I mean? So this is saying C is equal to the set containing its elements 0, 2, 3, 4, or C is equal to the set containing its elements 0, 1, 3, 4, or C is equal to the set containing its elements 0, 1, 2, 4, then S equals 0 or S equals 4. Alright? So this correct statement in line with the definition of the big intersection has fallen out of the mechanics. If I examine the meaning of the original expression, the big intersection of tau of X such that X is an element of A, then I look here, we have, if I took the intersection of all three of these sets, we would get 0, 4, which was the point. So the mechanics have worked out, yet again, indeed. Alright, I'm learning to appreciate set theory more. This axiomatic set theory is a strange activity here. It's a lot of nothing. In a way that I appreciate. Alright, now, however, we have a leak code problem to complete. Hello, what are we trying to prove? We are proving something on the set of all subsets of the whole numbers. No. Let's see, are you still here? Nope. Alright, never mind. We weren't trying to prove anything, actually. We were trying to understand the meaning of a definition of an operator schematic. Trying to understand the meaning of a definition of an operator schematic. Oh, the places you will go. Oh, the fun you will have. Alright, let's switch over. So, leak code, racket, leak code, crunch. Alright, we are in crunch mode, chat. We've got to hurry. Or what? Or we will not get the submission in on time. Okay. Link code crunch. Software. Alright. Does got people all over chat today. Let's, I guess we'll do this. Alright. Now, let's make it always on top and then immediately downsize it. Alright, so can we complete? Right, so our function was broken due to these let definitions being incorrect. Okay, so we have to fix these let definitions and then hopefully everything will work. I'll say daily leak code crunch. Leak code daily crunch. Alright, so do I need to recall the entire process again? Hopefully not. Alright, so low is 1421, high is 9862. Are randomly chosen numbers. Not actually randomly chosen, but meaningless chosen, whatever, numbers. Okay, let's see. Unchosen. Yeah, no, whatever. So how many are between 1421 and 1500? Is one question. We're answering that question using this function up here. Okay. We also used this function to investigate the properties of this discrete mathematics problem. Okay. So we've split this question up into asking between 1421 and 1500. Then we need 1500 and 1600 all the way through to 1900 and 2000. What the process is, maybe I don't have to relate. But we would just be aware that we split up the problem. We handle the tens and ones, then we handle the hundreds position. Rather, hundreds position up to here. Then we handle the thousands between 2000 and 9000. Then we handle the hundreds place. Well, actually, this should be... this example is bad. This shouldn't say... and then... 9... and... 862. Alright. Now, so what we said was... thousands... Yeah, okay, though this does not describe a process. This describes the process. What do I mean? So this is, we have a vector, a thousands vector. Okay. And that tells us how many of the thing that we have for each thousand gap. Okay, so if the thousand gap encompasses 2000 to 3000. Okay, so actually maybe we want to do 2000 and 3000, and then dot dot dot, and then 8000 and 9000. And then maybe we want a space like this. Alright, so this clusters them into groups. Now, so we said for the thousands case, what we need to know is the ceiling of divide the low value, which in this case is 1421 by 1000. That's going to give us 2 in our sample case. And then the floor of divide high by 1000, which would be 9862 floored after division by 1000, so 9. Okay, that gives us our 2000 and 9000. Okay, but more importantly here, it gives us our positions in our thousands vector. Okay, so when we're tallying up the thousands, we'll be doing fold left on lambda integer result plus vector ref thousands vector integer integer and then result. Just standard fold L boilerplate with the result here. So this performs vector ref on each of the values of these integers that are in the range from 2 to 9. 2 to add 1 9 actually. And that's just because of how range works. Okay, so that's what we're doing with the values A and B. That makes sense. Okay, now we have the value C and A. Why do we need the values C and A? Hundreds. So low hundreds is a bad way of naming. Maybe a bad way, maybe a fine way, I don't know. A way of naming 1500 to 1600 .. 1900 to 2000. Okay, so our low hundreds we have ceiling divide low 100. Let's see. What is divide low 100? Right, well that's going to give us 15. The low value is 1421, so we divide that by 100 and then we take the ceiling. No, rather, we divide that by 100 and then we take the ceiling, yes, and that gives us 15. So all we're doing here is noting that the let definitions that we're associating with these values are enough information to do the calculations that we want to do. So in this case, the calculations we want to perform are yeah, this isn't an explanation of the process, it's an indication of what variable we would need. Okay, so let's see those values in use here. What do we plan on doing with this? So we've obtained 15 and we have obtained 2. 2 is going to tell us 2000, 15 is going to tell us 1500. Okay. Now, what do we do with these values? So we establish values E and F, let definitions E and F. What happened to D? Oh, it's associated with the high value, okay. So we establish let definitions E and F. Okay, and what do these let definitions need to be? We need the thousands place, which is 1, and we need the hundreds place, which is 5. So we take a floor of divide C10, where C is 15. Could we do that by subtracting 1 from A? Interesting, let's see. I mean, you know, one fewer instance of division, one more instance of subtraction. Could make a millisecond difference, you never know. Let's see here. Floor of divide C10. Right, well what we need out of this is 1000. The question is... Well, yes, so the point would be, if we go back up here, we handle the tens and the ones gap using the function we've established. Then now we're handling 1500 to 2000. We need to know the thousands place because that tells us well, you have a different schedule of values, as it were, between 2000 and 3000 for each of these hundreds places, as opposed to between 1000 and 2000. So we have to know the thousands place value, and then we have to know the termination point. So this is, the termination point is always going to be less than 1000 more than the low value, or 1000 or less than the low value. The point there being that I'm only performing this calculation to get up to the next 1000. that 1,000 minus 1 is going to be the correct value. Okay, so the point is that we can replace this instance of division. Let's see. We can replace this instance of division by 10 with minus a1. And we also don't have to perform a floor operation, so minus a1. I don't know why I gave them all hashtags, it's just a habit by this point. Alright, so this is our thousands place. Now let's go over to our code and rewrite that. That's not the code, this is the code. Yeah, let's put the code on the end, if racket will work. Alright, now, so we're saying E is minus a1, minus a integer 1. Okay, then what now? We need the hundreds place. Is there a cheaper way of doing that? No, I don't think so. Nothing is striking me. Alright, so C, which is 15, and we want to subtract, so this is thousands place and hundreds place. Now, admittedly, not normalizing this is confusing. We might do some normalization in the let definitions to clarify what these values are supposed to represent, but we might not either. Okay, so we have minus C star 10E. Alright, and what is that? So once again, E is the thousands place. We're multiplying it by 10 to get the value of, in this case, 10. We subtract that from 15, so that leaves us with 5, which corresponds to 500 here. Alright, and corresponds to 500 will mean that we employ the number 5 in a function in that, according to that rule. Alright, so what exactly does that tell me? That this is fine. Okay. Now, what it kicked up the error was the value G. We gave the wrong value to G. Okay. And so now we're about to arrive at the definition of G. What is that definition? Alright, so we need the thousands place, which is going to be 9, and we're saying that this is divide B 10. But what was B? B was... yeah, that's not right. Wait, we already have the thousands place. Right? Well, how are we using it is the first question to ask, and hopefully be able to answer. Yeah, it should just be B. So we're using this value, let's see, sub 1G. We're using it to shear out this list, where each of these values corresponds to difficult to relate. Okay, now, so this is actually just B. We don't need G. Okay, so we'll make this H, and no, rather, we'll make this G, and then this will be B. Alright, now sub 1B, and this will be G, and then we'll go over here, delete this, and every other instance of G integer becomes B integer. Okay, this becomes G, and every instance of h integer becomes g. Okay, run. 80. I don't think that's correct. No, that's definitely not correct. Okay. Why not? Let's see. We don't have to have this defined as a separate function either if we really want to make things horrible. Yeah. Maybe we do. Let's see. There's not really a good way to get this value. Well, the way to get this value would be we go up here and we say display force cycle low, display force cycle function below. Oops. Star C integer 100. Okay, line and display force cycle high. Display force cycle function high. I did it again. Star D integer 100. Go. That doesn't seem correct. Oh boy. Which, ooh, it's real bad because that function is how we explored the properties of a discrete mathematics problem before we solved it putatively. Could be that we chose the wrong variables. What are C and D? Let's go back. So we have 1500. It's like I've completely dropped what the point of this problem is. Well, we haven't really been thinking about what the point of this problem is, have we? So there should be values here because we could have 1441, for instance, if nothing else. So there is at minimum 1. So these values should not be 0, but they are. And we have grossly too many values. Oh, hold on. Right, actually this is correct. Right. That is totally unclear. Hold on, let me put in the values that I used in my actual example instead of these test case values. So 1421. What value? 9862. Alright, so limited sum function, where is that used? Okay. Do we have a corresponding call here? Okay, so this is... You know, I tried hard to make this organized, but I'm afraid I've lost grasp of the organization here. but we're still gonna try to power through this last hour. So this is a way of defining what list gets passed into limited sum function. Right, so we have, this is actually a continuation of the let definition, which is not obvious from the typography. Yeah, okay. And let. Maybe that makes it more obvious. The displays are also kind of throwing off the. Okay. Let's see. Alright, yeah, I mean, we've made this mistake in the past, so I say to myself, well, we're just going to get in and get out, so it doesn't matter if I remember what these mean. But it's part of the. It can be, anyway, part of the example construction to keep track of what these letters are. Yeah, but I mean, this is a case like so many other cases where the meaning of this number is not easily expressible. By which I mean that, yes, I would prefer to have a better name than C, but this number is entirely the function that it's serving inside this sequence of operations. Well, I mean, you could say it's 1500 divided by 100. Okay, and I could make that its let definition name. I don't know how informative that's going to be beyond saying that it's C. Hmm. Let's see. So we need some way of tracking like this. Or maybe with brackets. Yeah, like this. This is F minus 10F. The fact that everything is in comments and I have no colors to work with is also not so helpful, I think. Shear 5, which is F, and that is a list tail operation 5. Okay, and what this is doing, well, so we're shearing thousands, so sub 1e. Yeah. The example here is just 2 in the air. The names aren't helpful. We're not, and it's preventing us from keeping track of the process. If nothing else, we have to shift back and forth between looking, what is this supposed to be, what is this value supposed to be, and then going back over here, whereas if I had the name, I could keep track of that. A integer, not relevant, never mind. Let's see, so we have low hundreds, sum list. We take list tail, sub 1e integer. So this should be the list that we're passing into this function is supposed to be list tail f, not ending at f. Right. We're supposed to have sheared something off the front. Yeah, this is not going well. Let's see. Shear 0, we shear f. So each of these should have an additional shearing operation. Low hundreds sum list is list tail sub 1e, and here list tail of the list that results from this, and that shear is f. Okay, f integer. Alright. And then similarly with the high integer, shear 8, so shear sub 1b first. Yeah, and then we need to, so that's for the thousands place, and then, but we never need to shear for the hundreds place, so this is correct. So we don't need to shear any further. Okay. And then the question is how far into the list do we need to go after we've sheared it? And that depends on how many hundreds we're working with. So it's here between 0 and 800. This is actually quite clever if you hold all of this far enough away that the horrible details don't show up. I like this list. It's funny to me, anyway. And then our thousands vector is also fine. Alright, so now sub 1g, I guess we can just trust that that's correct. Alright, run. So why are we getting nulled out here? Maybe because of negative? Right, so are we supposed to do, we might be supposed to do sub 1 again, so minus g integer 2. Yeah, I mean, we could do the sensible thing and replace this with 0. Nope, still gets null. Why are we getting nulled out? Yeah, we're not supposed to have that large of an in value. It looks like this is on the second call. So, I mean, we might be going back to negative. Let's reset that. So, the second call where we use the value of sub 1g integer. Okay. G integer being minus db. Okay, can we do... I don't think you can do displays inside of let definitions. I guess we could go through and check all of these, so ceiling, divide low 1000, floor, divide high 1000. Okay, giving us 2 and 9. So ceiling of divide low 100 takes 1421 and gives us 14.21. Ceiling is 15. Okay. Now with B, never mind, not with B. So this should be 9. And that might be the problem. Right, how are we deriving D? Right, well this needs to be 9. And then, what is D telling me? Well, maybe we need to do the same process, like we haven't separated out. Yeah, so D might be... let's see, minus floor divide high 100, star B10. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, what I'd want to do is work my way back through the entire thing. I'm pretty sure it's all correct up to this point, but it's turned into a nightmare with this. And that's because the notation's bad. Probably. So let's do... Alright. We'll keep this off to the side so that I can get it back if I need to. Okay, let's see. Alright, so we begin again. With perhaps enough time, but maybe not. Alright, so... process for 1421 through 1500. So we establish A, and A is going to be ceiling of divide low 100. Okay. And then we run force cycle. Supposing that works, which why wouldn't it? Yeah. with low integer, and then the high is A. Alright, one out of the way. Now we need process for 1500 to 2000. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Alright, so we have a list. Okay. Where did I put a copy of that list? Okay. Now we need put in here. This gives us 15. Now, so we need B, which is floor of divide low 1000. Okay. Which in this case is going to give us 1. Alright. And what do we want to do with that? Let's see, so we also need hundreds placed. Well, so we do take, right? Or list tail. Question mark box, list, integer, sub 1b. Why do we want to do that? And not merely because that's what we did last time. So b is 1 in this case, sub 1b will be 0, we don't shear this list. Okay, and that's because we're in the thousandths place. So what this up here is showing us, 1000 to 2000, 2000 to 3000, 3000 to 4000. This is showing us how many there are between 1000 and 1100. How many there are between, yeah, we could do that here. 2, 1000 to 1100. 3, 1100 to 1200, to 100 to 200, to 300, to 400, to 500, to 600, to 700, to 800, to 900. Okay, so 10. No, it would be 9. To 900 to 2000. Right, that will be... Okay. So then we shear off, for each thousandths place value, we shear off one of these elements. Alright. So that's our list tail. And now we need C, which is minus... let's see. minus A star B10. So this is going to give us 5, which corresponds to 500. Alright, and so now we do list tail. Yeah, these are not cumulative. So first shear, sure, second shear. Alright. This will be first shear. Okay, and how many are we shearing off here? Okay, so we don't need between 0 and 100, 100 and 200, 200, 300, 300, 400, 400, 500. So we need to shear off 5. Okay, if I have define a list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I say list tail A5, that leaves me with 6. That shears off 5. So that is the number you shear off, the how many you shear off. Alright, so this will be list tail C. Okay. Now the idea is that we need to sum. Right, so let's make D. That's going to be minus 10. I assume 10, it might be 9 actually. Minus 10C. Okay. Which gives me 5, which corresponds to 500, which corresponds to 2000 minus 1500, as it were. Okay. So now what? And what does that do? So we've sheared up to, let's see, I'll make a note here that this produces, oops, this produces this list because it doesn't shear anything, and this produces this list because it shears those elements off. Okay, and so now we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And I think that should be correct. Okay, and now we call the function where is it? I don't have it lying around. Limited sum. Alright, and we're going to call limited sum function with input list, which will be second shear. Okay, and then in limit will be 5 question mark? Or it might be sub 1. Well, that depends entirely on how it works, right? So let's go over here. So let's do some testing. So limited sum function list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I do 0, 0, and then we'll do 1. Okay, that gives me 1 and 3. So if I provide 0, we do 1. That makes sense, right? Then I provide 1, we do 1 and 2. Okay, making sense though is not really what's at stake here. How do I keep getting that wrong? Okay, let's see. What is actually at stake here? Let's see. So the exact question is, how do we get the 5? How do we get the limited sum on all 5? Alright, if I plug in the value of 4, 3, 6, 10, 15. Okay, so it'll be sub 1. D. Okay. For negative instead of 0. Okay. Or we should say to enable negative, which is my preference. Alright, and then what do we do? That should produce our value. Well, actually, so accumulator, yeah, 0. Okay. Alright, now that's the process for 1500 to 2000. Okay. Now we need the process for 2000 to 9000. Okay. Let's see. So we're gonna have this. I think we can probably copy. I think this is just right. Yeah, we can figure it out again. Okay, so we have our vector. Define thousands vector. Yeah, I can keep using this. To highlight that these are things that I would have to define. Okay. Now I could also put that on the function definitions, but we'll ignore that for now. I think the functions call enough attention to themselves. So we have our thousands vector. Okay, now 0 from here. 1, 2, right? Okay, so we have fold L for each. Is it for each or for list? I am going to cheat a little bit here. Let's see. Wait, I just did fold L. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I wonder, does vector fold, is vector fold a thing? I don't know. Alright, so lambda, let's see, position, result, plus result, vector ref, thousands, vector, let's see, vector ref, thousands, vector, this should be, right, well, so this is for 1002, 2 to 3, etc. So it should be at 1, and the value that we get there is the thousands place. Yeah, so this should be B. Vector ref. Oh, well, hold on. This should just be position. Okay. And this should be from initial value of 0 and range. Not 8. No, no. It has to be a letter. Yeah, B, and then so that's going to be 1, which is correct. Though it's the reason this is correct is really bad, but it's always correct, so I guess it doesn't matter. I mean, alternatively, we could put in a dummy value at the beginning of the vector. And do add 1b. I mean, it's not really clarifying for anything. Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, okay. Range from B, okay, 0, add 1b, and the end value of this range is 9,000, which does not yet have a definition. So we need to define E. Okay, and that definition for E is going to be, it's the standard format, yeah, okay. That's going to be floor of divide high 1000, okay. Which in this case is going to give us, it's going to give us 9. How am I getting worse at typing? My hands are freezing. Well, fine. So we have, right, this is 9, which corresponds to 9,000. Okay. And now the way range works, that needs to be add 1. Well, hold on. Let's look at the vector. So we don't need 9,000 to 10,000. Which, yep, okay. We don't need 9,000 to 10,000. So instead we'll have 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9. Right, and that will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hot. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Bizarre. Alright, sub 1. E. Alright, that is that. Supposing my fold L works the way I expect it to. Now we do process for 9,000 to 9,800, which we could call high 800s, or rather high hundreds, whatever. Alright, so how are we going to do that? Alright, so it's the same process up here. So we don't need to redefine this, but okay. Now, don't need to redefine. Okay. Now, so we need to shear. Okay, and we need to shear until, so up to the point where this list matches this list. Okay, so that's going to be well, I don't know, let's count. Okay, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, let's confirm that. List tail 5 drops the first 8 elements, or rather, list tail 5 drops the first 5 elements. And here we're needing to drop 2, 4, 6, 8 elements. Okay, so this is going to be first shear high, and then we'll go back and change this to first shear low. Okay, now first shear high is going to be list tail box list integer sub 1, and it will be E. Alright, so now we've sheared off those elements, and now we need to take only those associated with, yeah, so this will be 0 to 100, 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8. Okay, so, and that's telling us the value that we pass to limited sum. Okay, and this is actually just, oh, right, we need to change that low. Alright, so now this is first shear high. Alright. And what value does this need to be? So we want to sum up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, this might also be sub 1e, but it also, that might not be the case. Okay, let's see. Let's take this over. Limited sum function list this 8, 0, 54, 19, 27, 34, 40, 45, 49, 52, 54. So now it should be 7, 10, 19, 27, 34, 40, 45, 49, 52. Okay, so this is going to be minus E2. Okay, to accommodate negative. Yeah, well, we're not, yeah. Okay. Because well, we were going 1421 to 1500, then 1500 to 16, 16 to 17, 17 to 18, 18 to 19, 19 to 20. But in this case, we're stopping at 800, so 700 to 800. And then we have to accommodate my horrible negative predicate requirement. Alright, so that's that. Alright, and now for process for 9,800 to 9,862 is going to be, let me see here, force cycle from 9,800, so we need a new definition because we don't have 9,800. Yes. That will be floor of high divided by 100. Okay, and that's going to be F, which is suspiciously less. That doesn't get the lime green because it's false. Yeah, this is less than the h that we ended up with. Well, it's less than the g we ended up with anyway. All right, so this is, in this case, 98. Wait, why do we need 98? Oh, so that we can multiply it back by 100. Ah, right. Star 100, floor, divide high 100. Is there a better way to do that? I don't care at this point. Alright, so 9800. Alright, so F and then too high. And that's that. Alright, so now let's go through and specify our let definitions. Okay, so let's move this over here, and our code, such as it is here. Okay. So a integer is ceiling of divide low 100. Apparently not. Ceiling of divide... Oh, well actually these notes are wrong, which is a bad start. If we want this to be 15, it would have to be... No, that's right. Yes, okay. Ceiling of divide low 100. Alright, and now B is going to be... let's see here. Floor of divide low 1000. Alright, we're gonna have to delete all of this code, but it's not that much code. I mean, the let definition is doing almost all of the work. Alright, now C is... I'll just copy this over. Okay, C... I don't think typing this is doing a lot of work for us. Yeah, whatever. Now... D is minus 10C. Okay, E is floor of divide high 1000. Okay, F is star 100. Yeah, this one's a little bit more suspicious, isn't it? Whatever. F, E, and there is no G anymore. And then we do, these. All right. Now what? Now, low hundreds sum list, which is not a good name. We'll call this, in honor of our notes, we'll call this first shear low. Well, no, we'll call this second shear low. Okay, that's not in our naming scheme, but sure, we'll do list at the end. Alright, and that is going to be take let me see. I mean, yeah, we can do first shear low, that's not a problem. Can't close that let. First shear low list will be list tail, question mark, box list integer, and that will be keep getting lost because it stays on the cursor. If I don't update where the cursor is, it teleports my view screen. Sub 1B. Alright, and then this will be list tail. For shear low, C. Alright, now we move on to what else? What do I define next? So we call limited sum function with second shear low. So that's low hundreds sum. Okay. And that will take second shear low list. Okay, and we're running sub 1D integer. Okay, with accumulator 0. Now thousands vector, that's already defined. Okay. Low hundreds sum. Alright, so we've already got... Yeah, but it's wrong. Right, okay, so let's copy this over. Alright, so remove that. Oops. B integer. E integer. Okay. Now, next is 9,000 to 9,800. So this first shear high is going to be list tail. Sub 1E integer E. Yep, sure. Alright, then limited sum function. First shear high list minus E integer 2 and then 0. Close parens. Now this is merely yep, okay, and now these force cycles are let me see. So f integer to high. And the low function is low to A. Okay, now if that doesn't work, we are out of luck. Okay, run. Oh no, we're out of luck. Run. Oh, okay. Oh, these require... Oh, I didn't... Well, first I didn't close that parent. Okay, now what? 523. That is not correct. Actually, I don't know that that's not correct. It might be. Actually, no, that has a good chance of being correct. We don't have any high value examples. 1200 to 1230, 62. That is not correct. No. No, 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 no. And that's gonna be the show for today. That is not correct. Let's see. Yeah, that's not correct. What is limited sum doing? So this is part of the process for hundreds. Yeah, we shouldn't be... let me think. So we call with sub 1D and we call with minus E2. Okay, display sub 1E, display sub 1E integer, line, display minus, what did I say, F? I don't know. Sub 1D minus E2, alright. Minus E2 displays minus E integer 2 line. Alright, so D is 7. Yes, it's not supposed to be 7 in such a case, is it? Like here, this accumulator of 0, that makes good sense. So this is in the 9,000 to 9,800. 9,000 to 9,800. Mm-hmm. So let's look up E. Okay, so that corresponds to... Well, so if we have 1230, then when I divide the high value by 1000, we get 1.23. When I take the floor, we get 1. Okay, so when I take minus E2, we should immediately get negative. And that was correct. The problem was D. Okay. That's minus 10C. Okay, that definition might be wrong. Let's see. Okay, so this is trying to tell us... Right, well, so this is also supposed to get 0 in this case. Uh-huh. think here. Yeah, this puzzle is, this is kind of wrecking me. One moment. Minus 10C. And the reason for that is because we want to go from 1500 to 2000, and we need that 5 value to tell us how many hundreds we're crossing. Okay, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. What does it tell us in this case? Yeah, minus 10C doesn't make sense. Or you only do, oh, okay, so if, how do you do, like, we could do an if statement here. If, well, because we don't have any hundreds to cross, this would be correct if, yeah, but now that I'm looking at it, so we would need, we also need the ability to cover these hundreds cases when we are, like, if it was 1200 and then 1420, e.g., or whatever, we would need to cover 13, like the 1300, 1200 to 1300, 1300 to 1400 would have to get covered by this case. So we need really just a different way of calculating this, a better way of calculating this that works in every case. How do we do this? It's the last, might be the last problem too, maybe. If I take high minus low, I divide by take high minus low, we're trying to isolate the hundreds place of high minus low, which curiously should work. Well, we already have the thousands place in the form of B, so this is the thousands place of low. Let me see here. High minus low and isolate the hundreds place, which would be, well, we could divide by 1000, floor, subtract, and then multiply by 1000. Let me see here. And this variable in question is D, right? Yeah. Okay. Divide minus high low 1000 minus floor of divide minus high low 1000 star 1000. And that's it. Alright, I'm out. I'm done. Good day. Farewell. I will not crunch. Okay, have a good one. See you next time.